it. So somehow it's October 18th. I think it's astonishing. So we'll take our cross-legged position, the favored one in the body, and just spend a little time adjusting yourself to feel like you're very tall and the legs have the support they need. You're elevating the sitting bones as much as you need to create the upright or even a little bit concave lumbar spine. And then just spend a little time moving your shoulders and your skull slightly back to align the shoulders with the hips, the skull right above the spine. And then with your hands still down, just take a few breaths, encouraging your chest, not only to kind of float forward, but also just to spread nice and wide. And then attempt to maintain the feeling you have across your chest and in your shoulders as you put your hands together in front of your heart and softly close your eyes. And as you look away from the brain, just let your attention move down to the lowest parts of your body, inviting these areas to surrender a bit further into the floor. Check in with your groins and try to release any tightness or holding or gripping. Same with the hips, if there's any holding or tension, see if you can use the weight of those heavy thigh bones to help your hips release. And then keeping that sense of feeling very grounded from the waist down, just start to take every inhale as an opportunity to lengthen the spine. Keeping the strong connection of your sitting bones rooting down, but starting to lift the pelvis, the whole rib cage, even the skull. Keep your gaze pointed down. Bringing awareness to the abdomen and creating more softness there. So we're going to talk about presence right now for a moment, and just 3 doorways as put forth by Eckhart Tolle. And of course, we know attention to breath, attention to sensation, the first 2, but the last one is kind of a departure. It's radical acceptance. So I have a little reading here from the Year of Living Your Yoga. For today, acceptance is seeing clearly what is. Acceptance does not mean that we are necessarily happy with the way things are, but that we see the way things are. Today, pick one circumstance in your life and be willing to see it the way it is, just so. So acceptance is a way to drop right down into presence. As you're ready, bowing towards your heart. Let your hands move down to your thighs, and as you're ready, lift your head. Let your eyes gently open. So we're going to apply that idea of acceptance today to whatever's going on in your hips and kind of investigating hip tension and how it might have something to do with back bends and might be limiting your back bends. So instead of focusing on a ton of back bends today, we're going to focus on our hips and do just a few back bends towards the end of class, just to see how they feel after some hip work. So we're going to start in reclining bound angle pose. If you have a bolster, it's a good pose to use your bolster in. If you don't have a bolster, it's definitely not necessary, but it does give your chest a little bit more of a lift. If you'd like to roll up a couple blankets and create a bolster, you can always do that as well. And you'll probably want a little more height where your head will be. So if you are using a bolster, maybe put a blanket over that. We are going to bind the legs today. So once you have your setup behind you, what's going to support your torso and your head, then you'll start to work on your legs. And first of all, you might notice your hips are not ready to be this open. So you might put some blocks under your, anywhere from your thighs all the way to your knees, doesn't matter where, as long as your legs feel supported. And you can move those blocks as you begin to open. You can adjust the blocks so that you are able to allow the hips to release in their own time. And then we'll take a strap and we'll create a loop with it. And we'll just drop it down over the head and down to the hips. And once it's there around your sacrum and around your hips, then you'll take the not the ring part, but the fabric-y part under your feet, just so you have contained your legs. And then you'll tighten off any slack that you have. So Mary, bring your strap between your knees. So from the hips, between your knees, around. So it's over the head, down to the sacrum and the hips. And then it should be running kind of to your inner thighs between your knees. So you have to open the knees. Yeah, and then the strap will be inside the knees, not outside. So from the hips, I think you've got it. There you go. Yep. And then tuck it under your toes there. And then you're going to pull off any excess that you don't need. And then recline yourself back and make sure that your buttocks are pulled away from the bolster end, that you're not, you don't want the buttocks to be lifted at all because your low back will not like that. And mostly the bolster is there to support your thoracic spine. So the area of the rib cage and the chest and the skull. So your lower back doesn't really touch anything here. It's just kind of floating. Be on the backs of your hands. And make sure your chin tilts toward your chest. You might need to kind of build up the height under the head to tip the chin toward the chest. And then once you've set it up, then second side of every pose is letting it work on you. So we work on the pose, step one, step two, we let the pose work on us. So passively just kind of yielding to gravity, to the weight of the body, meeting the floor. Shining the light of attention throughout the body, especially in the groins and hips here. If you're using block support or support to the hips, maybe adjusting that. If you're already a little bit more surrendered, you might need less support. We don't want to prevent the hips from opening with too much propping, so you want to make sure you're always adjusting. And then whatever's showing up here for you, are you pushing it away? Are you resistant? Are you really trying to change something about it, or are you accepting it? And if you're trying to change something about it, then you're not really present. And we'll be here another minute, so just softening the eyes, maybe closing the eyes. Even here, the shoulders still might be resisting a little bit away from the floor. Just let the shoulders descend toward the floor. And now you're going to begin to release your feet from the belt. So you might slide your foot out. You might also loosen the belt. There's not a wrong way to come out, but then you want to find your feet on the floor and your knees together to give your hips and your groins a chance to come out of that deep extension and rotation. And as you're ready, you can roll off to your side. And we're going to still work with the very same pose, but we're going to work with Konasana seated. And so most of us need to sit upon something when we're on the floor seated. The back needs a little bit of support. So you're going to use 1 or 2 blankets just right under the sitting bones. And you'll know you have enough height when you touch your lower back and you sense it's sitting upright, it's not tilting back, it's not rounded. And we'll join the legs and feet. And again, you can, not the legs, sorry, you'll join the feet. And again, if you need some support here, tuck anything. It could be blankets, it could be blocks, but support yourself so that we don't end up in this kind of gripping, resistant place with our hips and groins. And you'll start with your feet directly together and just kind of hold on to your ankles or shins with your hands. And this is kind of multi-purpose here. So as you hold your ankles and shins, you can kind of press your hands against the shin bones and draw the shoulders back and move the chest forward. And you can also resist your knees down when you're holding the front kind of ankle shin area this way. And just make sure when you're here that you're not, first of all, hyperextending, so you're not throwing the belly forward and making your lumbar spine really short. And also try not to shrink the sacrum laterally. So that's one thing we do here is we kind of jam up the sacrum. So use your belly, kind of spread your belly toward the lower back. Sit up nice and tall, keep descending the knees and the thighs down. So you might notice this is enough for you and you might not need the next step or steps. We're going to go 2 kind of places deeper from here. So just know that you don't need to follow that if you're in a good place for yourself. But we're going to grab a block and take the narrow plane of the block between the feet. And you still want to keep the heels as close as you can to your groins and sitting bones. So don't let the bound angle broaden anymore. You want to keep it nice and close. Again, grab the shins and kind of press the hands there, draw the knees down, sit up tall. If you're feeling this in your knees, that's a clue that you probably should back off a little bit or give your hips some support. When the hips are reluctant, the knees tend to take on what the hips aren't going to do. So we want to always be careful the knees aren't getting in trouble with these with the hip work. Okay, breathe into your stretch and we'll do one more setting here. So you might need not to do this. You might be fine where you are. Otherwise, you're just going to turn the block over 1 to the second larger plane. So the medium kind of distance between the feet. And then we'll stay 5 more breaths. So wherever you are, you're breathing into the groins, the hips. You're trying to keep your sitting bones planted, your low back nice and tall. You're keeping track of the sacrum remaining broad and the abdomen kind of hugging back toward the lower back rather than throwing the abdomen forward. Wonderful. And now you're going to release the legs and extend your legs forward. And just come into Dandasana to take care of especially your knees here. So pressing the backs of the knees toward the floor. Make sure your heels aren't floating. Keep your heels planted. Try to roll the inner knees down. Your hands right next to your hips. The elbows slightly clamping in. And firm your legs so that the knees are really stabilized. Squeeze your thigh muscles as best you can. Okay, so we're going to keep working with external hip rotation. We're going to come into Shasana. So taking your 8 fingers to the inner right knee and try not to elevate the knee very high. You just want to kind of sneak that knee back. You're trying to bring your right heel toward your right upper inner thigh. And you might be able to see this, but I'm using my fingers to keep pulling the flesh of the under inner thigh kind of back to help that knee sit down. But if you still see a floating knee, very important that you support it. I thought I had the second blanket here, but So blanket might be sufficient. You might need as much as a bolster. You might have to work with a block if you don't have softer things available. So we're attempting to bring the knee, and this might not be true for everybody, but slightly behind the line of the hip. One day, someday, maybe not today. And then you're going to turn your torso, use your fingertips to turn your torso to face your left leg. So you're rotating the torso as best you can away from that right leg. But keep your attention in your right leg, really anchor into your knee, draw the knee down. Big inhale here. And on your exhale, lengthen forward any amount over that left leg. We're not going to come into the full deepest. This isn't forward bending week, and that's really not the point of why we're doing this right now. I just really want you to tap into how much elongation you can feel in your right upper inner thigh, and keep externally rotating the right hip to bring that knee down. Meanwhile, of course, you're trying to align your torso over this left leg. You're trying to keep your shoulders back, even though they want to curl forward. And you might feel a nice warmth or tingling in your right lower back. So give that some breath too. Keep pressing the back of the left knee into the floor. Try not to lead with your chin. Try to lead with your sternum. And now inhale, lift through the top of the head to come up. And then we're gonna come through Upavishta Konasana before we switch sides. So you can lift up that right knee, a safe way to transition out of it. Extend the leg forward and then take both feet wide. And because we're not going to be here super long, don't worry about adjusting onto the corner of the blanket. We'll be fine with just the edge. But take your legs as wide as they're willing to go. Make sure your toes arrive above your heels. And again, be careful that you're not doing throwing the abdomen forward and shortening the low back. So fill the lower back, the concave area, with the abdomen. So both sides are long. Take your hands right next to your hips. Anchor into your legs. Make your legs 100 pounds each. Press them into the floor. And then keeping those legs as they are, start to tilt the torso forward using the forward tilt of the pelvic bowl to kind of guide you in. So again, we don't want to be leading with the chin. Keep your sternum pulling forward. And if anything, you might have to adjust your head back because the head does like to pull forward here. Keep anchoring into your legs. This is really about the legs right now. Breathe. And even though you're tilting forward, don't let the belly push forward. Keep the belly drawn toward the back body. Remember, everything moves back except the sternum when we're doing forward bending. Back, 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 except the sternum. So draw the belly back, draw the chin back, draw the eyeballs back. Keep angling forward. Good. Inhale up and exhale. And we'll draw our legs back together, Garudasana. Nice work. And so left side of head to knee pose, Janu Shasana. So using the 8 fingers behind the inner left knee, keep the knee low. You're rolling that flesh back there. So that's going to help you close that heel up nice and close to the upper inner thigh. Maybe that left knee goes back behind the line of the hip, maybe not. And then you're going to support it again if you need support there under the knee, so you don't have a floating knee or a gripping groin. And then you're going to turn your torso as well as you can to square with the right leg. A few breaths, just really acknowledging the work that this left leg is going to do. It's your anchor. And then start to lengthen over the right leg. So we're only coming to the half position, the flat or concave lumbar. We're not rounding the spine. We're not doing our deepest head to knee pose here. And we're keeping a lot of awareness in this anchor leg, the left side here. The hip, groin, the knee pressing toward the floor. And when we tap into that, every in-breath, we might be able to extend over the right leg a little farther. Draw the belly toward the lower back like the underside of an umbrella. And on an in-breath, lifting yourself up, standing up that left knee and extending the leg. Just bounce your legs a little bit or shake them out. You might massage them or kind of roll them, whatever feels good to refresh your legs. Okay, so similarly, we were in Janu Shasana, which is kind of this shape. We're going to take it a step farther, which maybe you don't need. You should know by now if what the hips are telling you, and you should be in that acceptance state of mind. If you're able to go farther, we're gonna work towards a pose called Artavada, Padma, Pashimotanasana. So it's basically a seated figure for forward bend, which means we're going to be placing the right ankle to begin with on top of the left thigh. This isn't the pose, this is a modified pose. So one day it's the heel up to the upper inner thigh crease there. But for today, we're just elevating the ankle right above the knee. So again, you might not need that, and you might come into Janu Shasana again on the right side. So you have to kind of make an assessment of what's going to work. If your knee is floating and you're doing Artavada Padma, you might tuck the soft prop under your knee just so your knee has support and your hip then can start to soften. If the knee doesn't have support, then the hip sometimes just kind of has a holding pattern. Okay, so you're deciding, you're choosing your own adventure here. You're going to really stabilize and firm that left leg to the floor. You're going to try to angle the right knee down. And we're going to angle forward. You can keep your hands on the floor or behind you. I find it helpful to kind of have the hands behind me to keep my chest forward. Since we're not going for our full forward bend, we don't need to reach forward and grab the foot. And again, try to align the sternum with that left leg. Try to squeeze the back of the left knee to the floor. Really gently working into a deeper right hip rotation, pressing the knee toward the floor, as long as it's not being absorbed by the knee. And wherever you're feeling sensation, give it some breath. Okay. And now inhale, you're going to come up and you're going to slide your left foot onto the floor. And you're going to bring weight into your hands with your back behind you a little bit. So you're kind of in this little kind of sitting V shape. And we're going to stay about 5 breaths. So try to roll the shoulders back, lift your chest like you're sunbathing, look up slightly, keep angling the right knee away from the torso side. And wherever you have enough sensation, give it some breath. Wonderful. Now to take care of this right leg, you're going to slide the left foot onto the floor. You can step the right foot down. Take both hands behind your right thigh. Extend the leg at an angle off the floor. Really let the weight of the leg sit in your hands. Shoulders back, look slightly up. Pressing the left leg into the floor, reaching out through the right heel. Couple breaths, really squeezing and firming that leg so the knee is happy again if it wasn't happy. And then you can go ahead and step down and start back from Dandasana. You might have different needs from right to left. So just making that fresh assessment. If you want to go back to Janu Shasana, if you're ready to take that ankle up onto the thigh and come into a little bit of a deeper place. So as we develop the hip work, the external rotation, the foot comes closer to the upper inner thigh and the knee comes closer to alignment with the hip. Okay, so Janu Shasana is kind of a more generous space, and now we're making our space a little more compact. Okay, prop the knee if you need. Hands can be kind of just sitting next to the hips. Point your chest squarely at the right leg. Come to the top of an inhale and exhale. Just come forward any amount until you kind of can sense into that left hip space, getting a nice amount of sensation. Make sure your chin isn't jutting forward, your eyes aren't bulging out of your head. Belly floats back, sternum pulls forward. Good. And now inhale, come up. You can slide that right foot to the floor. You can sit back on your hands, kind of angled back. But as you sit back, don't slouch. So keep your shoulder blades moving toward the chest, your chest lifted, your shoulders rolling back. Your eyes can look up so that your skull is consistent with the spine. Pressing the knee, left knee toward the floor. Taking a few breaths. Good. Now inhale, you're going to start to sit back up, slide that right leg out nice and long again. And you can kind of clasp behind the left thigh, scooping that thigh, lift the leg from the floor, extend the leg any amount. Try to straighten the leg fully, press the right leg into the floor. Keep your chest forward, don't slouch again. Reach out through the inner left heel, the big toe ball mound, good. And then step down, extend the leg. And again, maybe bounce the legs or whatever refreshes your legs. Right, moving right along. We're gonna come into gate pose next, more external hip rotation. And this is the kneeling pose. So you wanna make sure your knees are comfortable and a thin blanket, nothing bulky. You wanna still feel stable. But if you need padding, put a blanket down. And we will work with the block over to the right side. So we'll start with the right knee kind of being the lateral knee. And then you want to line up your right heel with the left knee. You want your left thigh bone and your right shin bone pretty much upright. And then just using your right hand against the inner knee, pressing there, you're going to begin just with the rotation of the torso back to a square position. So we feel that kind of pull to the right. So we're only trying to correct, not overcorrect, just so the shoulders and hips square up with the long side of the mat. Meanwhile, you're getting this really beautiful inner thigh stretch. On an exhale, you're just going to let the knee move beyond the ankle. On the inhale, you're going to pull back. Okay, so you have to move with your own breath. Keep working with your hand, kind of training that knee to press toward the small toe side so it doesn't knock in toward the big toe side. And we'll just do 3 more with our own breath, exhaling. Inhale to pull back. One more time here. Good. And then next time you come back, go ahead and extend your leg. And now we're going to do the same thing. Exhale. We're a little deeper now. Inhale, pull back. Your foot does not have to completely come to the floor, but you're working toward that direction. Okay, once more here. One big exhale. And inhale to pull back. Good. And now for the full pose, we're going to put our right hand in line with the shoulder on the block, whatever setting you need. Right foot is moving toward the floor. If it's not fully grounded, you're just kind of drawing the toes toward the floor. And then inhale the left arm up and over. And see if you can kind of pull that right thigh bone, that long femur bone into the ball and socket joint in the hip. So you're kind of scrubbing the heel toward the hip, which might give you a little more extension over the leg, the torso and the arm. It's a big kind of wave of energy from the heel out through the fingertips. Inhale, lift yourself out of it. And then we'll switch over to do the same thing, other side. So we'll start just with the 90-degree knee. The block will be there for that last part. And make sure your lines kind of work. Heel runs into the knee. Use our hand to kind of train the knee to press toward the small toe side. And then just spend a little time there, rotating your torso from left to right, just to bring things back to a squared up position. And then when you're ready, you can exhale, do 5 of these, inhale back. So with your own breath, there's no rush. The longer you can kind of linger in that exhale, the more tension you will discharge from your body. I lost count, but I think we have one more here. And the next time you come back, extend the leg. You're still keeping the heel in line with the knee. Your foot, if not fully grounded, is kind of reaching toward the floor. And then again, you can keep working with pressing the knee. We're going to exhale, leaning to the left, inhale, to come back to the right. 4 more of those. Two more. One more. And when you're back again, we want a firm leg. We want the foot moving toward the floor, if not grounding to the floor. We're going to place that left hand roughly in line with the shoulder as best you can do. Rotate your torso from left to right, and then adding that right arm. And then instead of pushing the left heel away from the torso, try to draw it toward the torso, see what happens. Hopefully you feel a little bit more of that cascading momentum sweeping up the right side body, extending over the left leg. So really plugging the femur head into the hip socket. Use an in-breath to lift you up and out of it. Good. And then go ahead and tuck your heels underneath your sitting bones, taking a moment in Vajrasana, which is the thunderbolt position. It's a modified hero pose. And giving yourself just a few moments to rest. Okay, so we're going to work on a few lunges. So we've done a lot of external hip rotation, but lunges will start to get us open in the hip flexors, which is a huge piece of back bends. So we're going to work with blocks, and you can keep your blanket for your knees. And we'll have 2 blocks on the short end of the mat. We'll stay facing this direction for both left and right, right and left, I should say. And then once you have that, you can take your right foot forward and keep your left knee kneeling. And again, start with those right angles. You want to feel your left thigh bone is vertical, your right shin bone is vertical. And we'll take our hands to our hips and just bring the elbows in as close as you need to so they're not any wider than your shoulders. And with the idea that there's a book on your head, your torso is going to stay vertical. You're going to exhale and shift weight forward so the right knee moves beyond the ankle. And you're going to inhale and pull back. So it's a smooth kind of gliding, and you're moving with your breath. We're going to do 5 of these here. So you really have to plunge the tailbone toward the front body to keep the lumbar long and to keep your torso vertical when you're moving into that exhale. Two more. Good. So the next time you are in deep, you're going to stay deep rather than pulling back. We're going to stay in that forward position. You're going to take your hands onto your blocks, put them at whatever height you need, and they are both inside the right foot. You're going to squeeze your right knee to your right arm. So in essence, we're trying to kind of fatigue the right hip right now so that it's more amenable to a hip opener in a moment. So squeeze the right knee to your arm or shoulder, whatever it's touching. Do your best to wind the flesh of the arms so your chest can come forward. We don't want to collapse the chest here. It might help you to look slightly forward. And you want to also be assisting the left front thigh to keep yawning open. So make sure you're far enough, tilted far enough forward that you feel the front left thigh, the hip flexor area, becoming a little bit more elongated. That's good. I saw a few of you go a little deeper. Now you're going to turn your right toes out 45 degrees. Just pivot, the heel stays in place. Let the right knee flop out to the side, which will uproot your inner right foot. We want that. You're going to stay down on your left block with your hand. Take your right hand to your hip. And now corkscrew your spine and kind of peek up at the ceiling to the left kind of ceiling. Sorry, not the left, to the right. Lengthen from the tailbone out through the top of the head. Lengthen, lengthen, lengthen that left front thigh area. Good. Now inhale and bring yourself back. And you're going to take your right knee onto your blanket. Both knees will become nice and wide. Sit back in child's pose. Give your forehead some support using anything that gives the neck a nice, smooth, consistent line with the rest of the spine. So don't take the head too low or high. And then as you're ready, we'll prepare for side two. The blocks can be kind of slightly set up off to the right side. Now your left foot steps forward. And you'll begin with those kind of 90-degree angles. So vertical left shin, vertical right thigh bone. Hands to your hips, elbows squeezing together, which will help you broaden the shoulders. So 5 of those kind of slides, keeping your torso upright. Beautiful, Sarah. Good. Inhale to pull back. And again, make sure you're not throwing the head forward. It's just a little trick the body does to make us think we're really deep, and we're not. So chest forward, the face floats back, the eyes float back. Pelvis tilts back. Linger in those exhales. That's really when the magic happens. And on that 5th one, you're going to stay deep. So when you go into that 5th one, you're there. You're going to stay deep. Take your hands down to your blocks, whatever height you need. Both blocks are inside the space of the left foot. And for now, your left toes are straight in front of your heel, and you're squeezing, actively squeezing the left knee to the arm. Keep sitting forward enough that you're getting a nice little yawning open experience on your right front thigh. So you might need to adjust that right knee back if you're not feeling enough there. Keep squeezing the left knee to the arm. Roll the flesh of the arms so your chest moves forward. You might look forward to help you do that. Breathe into this. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. You want to make sure you're nice and tired. And then pivoting off the left heel, just pivot enough you can turn your left toes out toward the corner of the mat, 45 degrees. Drop the knee out wide, uproot the inner left foot, so the knee's falling open, the inner foot is uprooted. Keep your right hand down, take your left hand to your left knee or thigh, and then corkscrew the spine to peek your chest over to the left, look up to the left upper wall or even the ceiling. Wringing out the body. You should really use those exhales, deep exhales. And then inhale, you're going to pull yourself back in. You're going to step the left knee back to your blanket. Go back to your child's pose, feet together, knees wide, torso low, head supported, tailbone points down. So your spine is in one single curve. Okay, now start to come up. We're going to clear the mat. We're going to do what I call a soft pigeon pose. So we're going to start with both of our knees bent and our feet are over to the right. And I'm just going to have you take a blanket and just your left buttock gets the support. So not the right buttock. This is attempting to bring our pelvis to a more level position. Then we want to see the left shin is kind of running parallel with the chest. Okay. The right leg can be as obtuse or acute angle, whatever works for you. So don't obsess about the position there. Just have that right leg be kind of off to the side and grounded. So you might want something soft to rest on if you have something. You don't need it, but it is kind of a nice addition to put right in front of the shin. And then what we're going to do is sit forward. So you might add height. You can kind of be creative with your props. If you can't get down low enough to whatever you've set there, you might add height. You might put a chair in front of you and rest your head on the edge of the chair. So it is helpful, we know, to help quiet down in these poses that we might feel really reactive, to get the head down. So if you're able to do that, it would help you surrender a little bit more and be less resistant. The hips are so resistant that we have to do what we can to support kind of quieting these poses down. So of course, by all means, if you can fully extend the right leg behind you and come into more of a classic full pigeon, I don't want to prevent you from doing that. So if that's something you can do and would feel good here, feel free to extend the right leg completely back and work toward that more full pigeon position. We're going to stay for 5 long exhales. And after the next exhalation concludes, then you're going to start to inhale and come up. And we're going to come through a downward facing dog just to relieve the legs and the knees. So just find your way onto your mat. Come into a downward facing dog. Getting the legs straight. And then when you're ready, you can lower the knees down. We're going to set up second side of that pigeon pose. So just the right buttock will have some support. Both feet will be kind of moving off to the left. You know you're going into the full pigeon, you'll extend that left leg straight back behind you. And then we're attempting to put the right shin kind of running parallel with the chest again. So you kind of see the heel and the knee are on the same line. And then something in front of that so that you're able to come forward and rest the head. So again, really no wrong setup as long as it works for you. And then as you're ready, you'll just kind of start to move into that forward bending hip opener. You might have a different experience on this side. 3 more deep exhales. You can use an in-breath to help you gently come up, finding your way back to downward facing dog. Just a short one. Make sure both legs come into their fullest extension. And then when you're ready, you can come out of that dog. We're going to come onto our backs. Have your block nearby, have a strap nearby. And if you like to put head support down, you can put a blanket down for your head. We haven't done a ton of internal hip rotation. We're going to do one pose right now, which is usually done standing balancing. It's our Garudasana eagle pose. So once you're lying down, lift your feet from the floor and cross your left leg over your right leg. And for a lot of us, it's hard to tuck the left toes behind the right toes. So just squeeze the shins toward each other. Imagine that you're really squeezing your inner thighs together strongly. And then you're going to take your arms, kind of put the elbows above the shoulders. Good. You're going to wrap your right elbow under your left elbow and catch the hands so they meet, or grab the shoulders. So in essence, we're kind of pulling everything toward midline. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Try to flatten your back against the floor. And then you're going to unwrap everything and switch it over to the other side. So you're taking the right leg over the left leg. You're trying to squeeze the legs together. The lower legs want to fly apart. You have to squeeze them together, clamp them together. This time, left elbow comes underneath right elbow. Tilt your chin toward your chest. Squeeze. And then release. Unwrap your limbs, place your feet. Beautiful. And you're going to find your strap. So you probably have your loop left over. That's fine. We're just going to use the loop to grab hold of the right foot so that we just have this tail. We don't have two tails. And we're just going to do one Padasana where we open the outer hip a little bit more. So your left hand will hold the strap. Your right leg is extended up. Your left leg is extended on the floor. You're going to reach your right arm out to the side. This is the version where you're going to imagine your right buttock is Velcroed against the floor. As you start to move your right leg to the left, we're not trying to uproot the buttock surface area from the floor. So really draw the right buttock back to the floor as you guide your right leg to the left. Watch the foot. You're going to probably see a little bit of a collapse in the inner foot. Keep reaching up through the inner foot. This will keep the leg really wide awake. And don't let your left foot roll out to the side. So keep rolling your left inner thigh back to the floor. Good. Come back to center. And switch your loop over to your left foot. The right hand will do the holding. You can wrap the hand if it gives you some support. Extend your left arm out perpendicular from the torso. And then start to move the leg to the right. And you might not have to go very far to get a lot of sensation here. Keep breathing. Keeping as much of the left buttock down as you can. Lift up through the inner left foot. Don't let it collapse or sickle. And that right leg is on duty. It's not taking a nap. So right toes standing up above the heel. Right inner knee rolling down, right inner thigh rolling down. Good. And back to center. Stepping the foot down. So we have 4 minutes to see how this work we've done today is going to affect our back bends. So we're going to do 3 versions of bridge pose into Chatush Padasana, just to kind of sense those poses after this work we've done. So the first thing we're going to do is just the really mild, lowest horizontal plane of your block, supported bridge pose. Lift your hips and just slide that block under your sacrum. Take the blanket away from your head if you're using one, because it would distort the pose. We don't need it right now. Unfold the arms, try to be on the backs of the hands. Take the tailbone up toward the ceiling. And so each one of these, we're going to extend the legs, just so we have a little bit of a more deep feeling of a back bend. So begin to extend your legs one at a time. And attempt to reach the toes and ball mounds toward the floor. Lift your chest, take the tailbone up. Keep rolling your thighs down. Smoothing out those hip flexors. Bringing the chest to the chin. Good. Now step the feet back under you and turn your block over so it's coming to the middle height. If you need a little more power in your arms, feel free to grab the edges of your mat. Otherwise, you're still on the backs of the hands. Take the tailbone up, extend the legs again, one at a time. Your feet just a little wider than your hips. Draw down with the big toe ball mounds, the big toes. Just keeping some awareness really in the hips, the zone of the hips. This is where a lot of us will notice that opening the hips, not only the front hip flexors, but also the work we've done with rotation. It gives you a little more power here. Okay, so last but not least, and you might choose to repeat this one that you just did, but step the legs back. If you're going to go into the full Chatush Padasana, you'll attempt to lift the block onto its tallest height and you'll turn it 90 degrees so you're running with the spine. We're not crossing the spine anymore. We're running with the spine. So the vertical block, highest block. And then once again, extending the legs. And from there, stepping the feet back. Lifting your hips up off the block, walking the spine down, and then drawing the legs in, taking a reclining child's pose just to soothe, down-regulate the nervous system, holding the knees a little closer together so you can feel that broadness across the lower back. And then finding any other movements that you need before we come into our Shavasana, which magically we have 5 minutes left for, thank goodness. So if you need a little bit more of a forward bend or a twist, make sure to take care of that now before you come into your Shavasana. And spend a little time just kind of perfecting the alignment elements of the pose so that you can truly be still. And softly closing the eyes and just taking the gaze toward your own cheeks. Think about your cheekbones here. And behind each cheekbone, you have little tiny sets of lungs. You're just imagining. Every time you exhale, the cheekbones, they just descend a little farther towards the back of the head. Soften your jaw, your tongue. All the little muscles that surround the mouth, surround the eyes. Smoothing out across the brow line. And just observing the breath as it comes and goes. The breath without any conditioning, that automatic, spontaneous breath. So this pose of zero effort, you might notice that you're trying to make small changes. Just really get comfortable with the act of observing without doing, just noticing. Noticing your potential for presence here. And whatever your feeling state is in your body, just applying that concept of radical acceptance. We can't be present if we're wishing things to be different. Just breathe into whatever you're feeling. Give it some deeper breaths. Let your next exhale completely finish. And then resuming that automatic breathing, breath you don't have to direct. Start to bring very gentle movement in. Fingers, toes, maybe rock your head. Maybe start to bend your knees. Fold your hands in onto your belly. Very gently moving on to either side of your body. And when you're there, use your hands as little pillows under your head. And just try to move at the speed of presence, so not rushing into what's next. Coming to seated as gently as you can. find yourself seated, do your best to sit up tall, supporting that erect, energized spine, which of course supports a similar state in the brain. And join the hands together in front of your heart, softening the face, welcoming a feeling of gratitude. Let's take a breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Thanks for coming this morning, everyone. And I look forward to whenever I get to see you again. So have a good week. Till next time.